All right, folks, it's time for the news and the news report on World Edition, and we'll talk about a number of issues. And all along those lines, I know that I've got Nick Palveda with me, and I've got other folks that might be joining later as well. I did hear some interesting news that was on the news yesterday as I was looking at some various news reports and all along those lines. And there is actually some reports going on because I know a lot of people are concerned about the age of the current president, but apparently there's some studies going out and there are some reports going on that definitely there might be some signs of dementia and the things along those lines, even from Donald Trump. So we could be having a problem that we have two presidential candidates that could be having these issues as well. Because I do know there was some conversation around the guidance that folks felt that President Biden was getting during the visit from the Japanese prime minister and all along those lines. But then, like I said, I did hear some reports that there were some concerns about the health and health concerns around presidential candidate and former President Donald Trump as well. So it'll be interesting to see how all of this plays out and if health concerns don't become an issue that cause us to get two other presidential candidates. But I'm not saying that'll be the case, but it'll be interesting to see how both parties handle that particular conversation, because I did see some reports about that, and apparently there's some people that are talking about the cognitive abilities of both of the candidates, not just one of them, and all in that space. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. Apparently, the U.S. has issued travel warnings for Israel with Iran attack believed to be imminent, and definitely there are some fears of things going on in Gaza as well. And the West is urging China to intervene with Iran amid fears of a direct attack on Israel. And definitely that's something that folks are paying attention to in world politics. And like I said yesterday, a Vietnam tycoon was sentenced to death in a $12 billion fraud case. So Vietnamese businesswoman Trong My Lan was sentenced to death in that particular fraud case. And definitely that's something that folks are talking about. And the U.S. Coast Guard and the Navy have rescued 3 fishermen from a deserted island after they spelled help on their vehicle. So Pacific Castaways Help Sign sparks a U.S. rescue mission and an unexpected family reunion. So definitely, apparently they spelled the word help with palm leaves. So definitely that's something that if you're going to be out in the ocean, you might think of ways to spell help, and all in that way. Russia City is calling for a mass evacuation due to rising floodwaters. So the water levels are rising sharply in Russia's Kurgan region, and apparently nearly 12,000 homes have been swamped as the Ural River keeps rising. So definitely that's something else that they've got to be concerned about in Russia as they continue their invasion of Ukraine. And in Myanmar rebels are taking key trading town, but a counteroffensive is looming. So Myanmar's military is losing control of key town on the Thai border, rebels say, in a major win for the anti-junta resistance. So definitely that's something else that is going on as folks are paying attention to Myanmar, which is not that far from Thailand. So definitely that is something that folks are talking about as well. And apparently, Israel has killed the son of a Hamas leader inside his car in a West Bank raid. So definitely looks like that is something else that is going on in that part of the world. And Japan's Fumio Kishida stresses the Ukraine aid and U.S. world role in his speech to Congress. So definitely it looks like the Biden state dinner for Japan was heavy on symbolism and, yes, of course, cherry blossoms as well. So Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida addressed the U.S. self-doubt about its world role in remarks to Congress. So that is something else that people are paying out attention to as well. And in news that from the religious standpoint, ultra-Orthodox ministers have broken ranks and say some Haredi youth must be drafted. So that is something going on in that part of the world with Israel. So Haredi ministers say Haredi public must internalize committing national folks into that whole thing. So Israel's potential shift on conscription of ultra-Orthodox Jews is threatened to split the Netanyahu coalition. So there are some folks that are thinking that they want folks to enlist in that space. There are some others that are concerned about that kind of conscription notion and all in that ways. And by the way, speaking of Japan and the Asian theater, Biden has vowed to defend the Philippines in the South China Sea. So definitely that is something that folks are doing. So Biden says the U.S. defense commitment to Japan and Philippines remains ironclad as he hosts a key meeting amid China tensions. And definitely you do know that coming up very shortly, as a matter of fact, in about 3 days, is the close of a tax season. So definitely folks are concerned about that and will be paying attention to getting their taxes done if they haven't already got them done, and all in that space. And in Colombia, I know we sometimes talk about Colombians are told to shower with a friend as the drought has hit the capital water supplies. So definitely looks like one of the world's highest cities is starting to ration water for 9 million people. So there might be a lot of folks that'll be doing shared showers and all along those lines, particularly in that part of the world, as apparently there is a shortage of water in that area and they're having to ration their water supplies. And if you're wondering about this Russian-Ukraine war, Putin is mocking a planned Ukraine conference and says Russia won't accept any enforced peace plans. And definitely, we're in day 778 of that particular war and everything in that way. So Russia apparently had to attack Ukraine's energy sites in response to Kyiv strikes, is what they're claiming, and all along those lines. So Putin says Russia was forced to respond to the Ukraine energy attack, and definitely that is something else that is going on as well. So like I said, a lot of things taken on in the world. As a matter of fact, South Korea prime minister and the top presidential officials have resigned in mass. So definitely after his election defeat, the prime minister has offered to resign after the election defeat. So definitely that was the South Koreans. They're saying Luke Skywalker strikes blow against President Yoon. So definitely that is something else that is going on as well. So definitely we'll see how all of this plays out in the political theater of the world and all along those lines. So definitely it looks like folks are looking at various things in the news, including the folks that sometimes can be signs of hope, but signs of hope not just from ourselves, but from some of our canine friends, because apparently Roger, an overly playful dog who failed the police academy, has become the star of efforts there in Taiwan and all along those lines, because apparently he is part of the Taiwan response team and has done a great job in terms of helping that particular situation and all along those lines. So he's become the star of the Taiwan quick response, and the TSMC, Taiwan Earthquake Recovery, won't allay the global semiconductor fears either. So definitely folks are paying attention there. And definitely it looks like this particular dog that I was referring to was a failed drug sniffing dog, but apparently he's doing a good job in terms of helping people be rescued and finding bodies and all along those lines. So definitely it'll be interesting what goes on in that space. And just below us in Mexico is calling on the International Court of Justice to expel Ecuador from the UN. So they're saying the Ecuador's raid on Mexico's embassy shocked Latin America, and definitely Mexico has broken diplomatic ties with Ecuador after that embassy raid. So it does look like we're having some problems even in our own backyard as well. And the EU, speaking of things around migration and all of that, has approved a major overhaul of migration rules. So the MEPs have approved the new migration and asylum pact. So definitely looks like there's going to be some major reforms in Europe, even as far as what's going on in that space and along those lines. So definitely that should be quite interesting. And I'll get ready to bring in my fellow panelists as I talk about some of the things that are going on, including the fact that Donald Trump could face prison time if he is convicted in the upcoming New York hush money trials. So that is something else that is going on in the news, and a surveillance bill has cleared a key hurdle in the House, putting it back on track. So, House GOP is pausing infighting to move forward on a key surveillance bill. So, definitely that is something that folks are talking about, as Senate Republicans are furious over Trump for trying to derail what some people are calling the FISA or FISA bill. So, definitely that'll be what's interesting. And we know we've been talking about on this network about abortion, and Vice President Harris is heading to Arizona days after restrictive abortion rulings, hoping to use reproductive rights to galvanize Democratic voters. So definitely, Harris is to give predictions of what a second Trump term looks like during her Arizona campaign stop. And apparently, Biden is canceling $7.4 billion in student debt for 277,000 borrowers. So that's something else that is going on. This notion of that possibility. And speaking of those kind of bills that are out there, I understand that there is a major housing bill that has been put out there by AOC and Bernie Sanders. So we'll see if that gets any traction as well. So definitely that'll be interesting what goes on in that space. And as I bring in my fellow panelists, I do see some news that, sometimes people tease people of when they're from certain rural areas about their family history and all along those lines. And apparently Tennessee is going to address it, because Tennessee lawmakers are sending a bill to ban first cousin marriages to that particular governor. I didn't even know that you could marry your first cousin, but apparently that is allowed, and all along those lines, at least in Tennessee, and definitely in that space. I'm going to bring in Christy. So I know Christina. I've got Christina with me. I've got Nick, one of the founders of the network, and Rick Rosner as well. I guess the first question I've got to ask you, because I literally stumbled across that story that I opened with and everything, is how concerned are we about the fact that it is not just Biden, but it is the other candidate that apparently is having some health issues? Because I did hear that there were reports that there might be some kind of dementia and other things even going on in the Trump sphere as well. So is it possible that we could have two presidents running against each other that have limited faculties and all along those lines? So what is our thoughts on that?
Each side accuses the other of having a candidate with dementia. If you listen to Biden, he's fine. He's coherent. He's in command of the facts. Fox News he's got a stutter, so sometimes he pauses, sometimes he'll get tangled in a sentence a little bit, and Fox News will string those clips where he hesitates together to make him look like he's out of it, but he's not. And Trump, it's hard to tell, because Trump has always just been kind of a blowhard who says whatever pops into his mind. And, it's the same as with my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law wasn't smart. She said nonsense her whole life. So when she did have dementia, it was hard to tell whether it was her just being her, or whether it was the dementia. Now, it would be fairly easy. Any high school science fair kid could take a sampling of what each candidate said 10 years ago, take a sampling of their public utterances, and statistically compare it to how they talk today and see if there's been a decline. There are diagnostic tools to do that for dementia based on the how complicated the words you use are and your sentence structure. And it annoys me a little bit that nobody's done that. So we really don't have an accurate idea. We can guess with Trump that, but he's under a lot of pressure. As you said, he's going to court on Monday. And does that make somebody say crazy? Or in his case, yeah, probably so. But does it mean he's demented? It's hard to say.
Well, look, just really quickly, I did see that I think one of them was a study that they had done that's the kind that you're talking about and everything. Now, whether that was a biased study or who did it, that I am not 100% sure.
I will Google it. I will look around for it. I'm excited to see that study.
Well, the thing is, I don't think either candidate wants to be tested, so they're both ignoring it. I had one of those tests done as I applied for Social Security or Medicare, whatever it is, but I don't remember what the test was. It was a memory test. Just kidding. Okay, but the thing is, they can test you for, dementia and pre-dementia. They also do brain scans. I mean, people don't know that right now. The MRI brain scans can determine a lot of your mental activity. My prediction in the future, they're going to be able to determine a lot about you, including your IQ, not by taking stupid tests, but basically doing brain scans on you and seeing the level of activity that comes from your brain. They'll also be able to do that using MRI to determine whether or not you have dementia. But see, dementia is not the issue. The issue is competency and incompetency. And unfortunately, we both have a real problem with two people that are incompetent who are running for office at the same time. Now, the third party candidate is worse. I mean, Robert Kennedy Jr., he cannot be serious. So where'd all the good people go? The good people don't want to run for these offices because they don't want to listen to all the garbage that takes place. So what you have is you have what you have. I mean, we're stuck with one candidate who's going to sail the United States down the river of debt, and the other one, if he gets elected, will do the same thing for different reasons. I mean, so what are we doing?
Hey, Nick, along those lines, you've got two candidates, because there is a very smart gentleman. Not saying that I agree with a lot of his viewpoints and everything, but there are actually two other candidates, and sometimes even Rick has mentioned them. But there are at least two other third-party candidates, because Cornel West is running, as is Jill Stein. Now, whether they have any snowball's chance of winning anything, that's probably.
I don't know anything about
Jill Stein is Putin's handmaiden. She's terrible. And I listened to Cornel West and his VP candidate on CNN yesterday, and well, his VP candidate is awful, just lunacy.
Well,
There's
always candidates that come from these weird parties. You see them run: the Constitutional Party, the Green Party, the I'm an Idiot Party, but they have no chance. See, the reality in America, there's two parties: Democrat, Republican. The reality in America is you can get a stranglehold over one of the parties. Joe Biden, who has a stranglehold currently on the Democratic Party, and Donald Trump, who currently has a stranglehold on the Republican Party, and they squeeze out any viable opposition. Nikki Haley would be a much better
it's not
candidate.
just them. It's not just them having a stranglehold. It's that they look at the polls and they see if they ran anybody else,
right,
they'd have less of a chance. Like Newsom, you could run the governor of California. Do you think the red states like the governor of California? His chances of being elected over Trump. No, so we have to wait for a new election cycle to get new candidates in 2028.
We'll see how that all plays out and everything. Just really quickly.
And they don't run off the issues; they run off their personality. If they can't run off the issues, because if they did, they would both lose, because they have no clue how to solve any issue in the United States. So
it's always been that way. Like,
I know that
we elect presidents.
America is governed by stupid people who vote for more stupid people. And
we elect tall presidents with good hair. With Reagan, we loved Reagan. Right. He looked great on a horse, had really good hair.
He's an actor. I mean, you know, the thing is, if you look at Trump, what got him there was he spent a lot of time in front of the camera with the Celebrity and Celebrity Apprentice and The Apprentice. So, you know, and Reagan, same thing. He spent a lot of time in front of a camera. Joe Biden got there on his traditional, hey, I'm going to suck up to every Democrat that runs down the pike until I stumble into the presidency of the United States. It doesn't mean he's competent. If you were to hire him independently, you'd look at, oh, the guy failed the bar multiple times. He graduated in the bottom of his class. No law firm would hire him. No top law firm would, for certain. But he could be a politician, of course. You know,
all right, so he's not our most brilliant. He's not our most brilliant. He's not the most brilliant president. The most brilliant president was Teddy Roosevelt, who wrote like 49 books.
What about John Quincy Adams, Rick? John Quincy Adams.
I mean, I know more about Roosevelt than Quincy, but so Biden's not the smartest of our presidents, but he's got 50 years of political experience, which serves him well, and he's not incompetent. He just does stuff you don't like, which is like, you know, increasing the debt.
Well, the thing is also, I don't like his spending programs, his freewheeling spending programs and destruction of the American. By the way, a lot of people, it's not just me. If you talk to anybody in business, they go, okay, what do you want to do? Give away your assets, okay? Spend throw a bunch of money at climate change, which may or may not work, right? take a situation that is dire, you're in debt, throw the American public into more debt, and then everybody goes, "Yay, we want you as president."
But Nick,
But
what president, either Republican or Democrat, has not thrown money at one cause or another? They all have their favorite causes. They all have something that they are about,
his
whether
favorite
that
cause
is
is
the farm or whatever. So what president
you
has
should go
not
knock on the door of White House, Mark. He'll hand you $100 grand. His cause is any cause. He thinks the U.S. government is just one big printing press.
What president has not given away? What president has not given away some money of one sort or another? Tell me a president that has not given away some money.
Bill Clinton was the last one to balance the budget. Okay, if you want a competent president, all you have to do is one thing: take the budget and effing balance it. Okay, then you got my vote. He didn't do it. He doesn't have my vote. Now who do I vote for?
But even Bill Clinton gave away some money.
But he balanced the budget. I don't care what he gave away. Balance the bloody budget, moron.
Let's look at the history since. So in 2007, well, first of all, so we get 9/11 happens in 2001. We spend $1 trillion in invading Iraq on false pretenses, saying that they had WMDs. Then there's the mortgage collapse crisis in 2007.
There's always reason to print money, Rick.
Right, but I'm just saying, if you look at then Obama spends, I don't know, $6 trillion to pull us, $8 trillion to pull us out of the mortgage collapse deal. Then the next president is Trump, who gives a $3 trillion tax cut to rich people and corporations, and then gets hit with COVID. And between Trump
gives away another $3 trillion.
Biden, they spend another 10, 12 trillion to pull us out, plus infrastructure spending under Biden. So yeah, the whole history, the whole 21st century has been presidents busting the budget.
Well, thinking about the budget, I gotta ask you this, because apparently I was looking up the presidents and everything, but there is a great museum that exists and everything, and I'm thinking that you would think that this is a nonsensical museum, and some people may agree with you that it's a nonsensical museum. But we know that Clinton had socks, as well as having buddies, which was their cat and dog, respectively. There were a number of other presidents that had various pets and everything, and I just looked it up because I did not realize that there was one. But apparently, if you go to DC, you can go visit the Presidential Pet Museum, so you can actually go visit the museums that exist, and it's actually called the Presidential Pet Museum.com. So I'm thinking that we don't need a Presidential Pet Museum.
Yeah, no, we don't. And by the way, the next time you go to the grocery store, all you liberal lunatics, do not complain about the fact your food prices went up. You paid for it. You paid for it, liberal lunatics, because it's paid for because they had to turn the printing press on so they could build things like the Pet Museum or the Palo Alto History Museum or whatever other crazy liberal lunatic idea that's out there that Joe Biden will sign off on, which is frankly everything. So, the thing is, what can you do? You can't do jack. As an individual, go to polls, vote whatever you want. But here's what's going to happen, okay? We're going to turn into an economy very similar to Venezuela or Argentina or Japan.
Who's in office?
Unless the future of America.
Really quickly, who was in office in 1999? Who was in office in 1999?
Is 8% per month.
Hey, who was in office in 1999?
I'll be in euros.
No, I said, who was in office in 1999?
Who was in office in 1999?
Clinton. Clinton
Clinton. First guy to balance the budget. Finally, we got a guy that has sense.
That was also the year that the Presidential Pet Museum was founded. That was founded by Claire McLennan in 1999.
But he was able to balance the budget. If he balanced the budget, look, I don't have any problem with it. But when these people aren't balancing the budget, your friend your friend Joe Biden has already submitted a budget that puts us another 1.7 trillion in the hole. If he did nothing and balanced it, we still have $1 trillion in the hole every 100 days. So what you have is a government that is completely out of control, and the media is being bought off because they get ads from the government, so they don't want to say anything. And all the businessmen are bought off. So
quick question: has Trump had a balanced budget ever?
Who, Trump? Trump can't balance his checkbook. What are you talking about?
I'm asking a question. Listen, I'm asking the question.
Checkbook. What are you talking about? He
So
can't balance
Trump-
his budget. Trump has no shot to balance anything. He's the king of debt. How can he even be a Republican? He's not a conservative. He's not a Republican. Give me a break.
So
Trump, he's what I call a Trumpster.
So Trump
all his
no-
company, half his company's going to bankruptcy
Trump has
because
not
he can't balance his checkbook,
balanced
and he's
budget.
not a Republican.
So you have
Don't call
two
Trump a
men.
Republican.
One is
Don't
Biden,
insult the Republican
and
Party,
another one
please.
is Trump, and both had not balanced their budgets.
All right, this is
So what makes you think to vote for Trump, who had 3 seconds sex with his little penis and paid for it $130,000 and booked it as illegal?
You're preaching
What
to the
are you
choir.
talking about, eh?
No, Trump is an abomination. Okay, what are you talking about? When I see these Republicans, purported Republicans, align themselves with Trump, they're not Republicans. They are Trumpsters. A true Republican would never vote for Trump because he's the king of debt and insanity. Okay, and so the Republican Party should be ashamed of themselves, seriously, for getting a guy who's so incompetent and not a true Republican in office as their leader, and that's Donald Trump. So he is absolutely not the solution. And
Nick,
I
the
rest
true
my case.
story why Trump today is a nominee for Republican Party. Do you know that or not?
Yeah, he is, because a lot of Republicans, the false Republicans moved over. They were called Tea Party.
No. Forget about this. No.
Yeah, and they all voted for him.
Intimidation. It's intimidation. All these little clowns in the Senate or in the House, they are all scared of Trump, physically scared. For
Why?
themselves, for their families, they cannot say even a word. It's intimidation, 100%. That's how he controls this little thing, what you call Republican Party, Trump Party, doesn't matter. There is no such thing as a Republican Party today. When Trump will be gone, the Republican Party has to rebuild itself from the scratch, from zero. It will take them 15 years. That's where you are going. So you're recommending to vote for a party which is intimidated to death by its leader, who is convicted and indicted and crook by crooks. It's a crook.
I'm saying what I said is you cannot vote for Trump. You cannot vote for Biden. Let's listen to Rick.
No, you can vote for Biden because there is nothing better in United States of America. There is no one is better than Biden. Remember, it's your fate. You are Americans. Goodbye. You are doomed to have Biden for the next 4 years.
I'll be in Europe.
No
The next 4
alternative
years,
for
why
you.
turns
My
your
friends,
economy down the
just
toilet.
accept it.
I'll be in
Accept
euros.
it. It's fine. You have to survive for another 4 years with unbalanced
I'll do
debt
fine, son.
and
I'm
whatever.
gonna be in Europe. I'll be in Europe. I don't
I
really give a
looked
rat's
up
ass.
the Presidential Pet Museum. No government money. One lady, Claire McLean, spent 15 years privately assembling all this presidential pet memorabilia. And then she got older in 2016. She tried to auction it off for 30 grand. I don't know what happened after that. It still exists. So somebody must have stepped up and bought it from her. At that point, maybe somebody tried to get a government grant, but we're talking like
private money. Private money, I have no
bucks.
problem with. No problem with that at all. So
Okay.
if it's private money, my problem is the federal government. My problem is even state governments. Most of them have balanced budget. My problem is the U.S. federal government is being run by a cadre of clowns. And the thing is, they need to be called on.
Where do most of the states get their money from? Nick, where do most of the states get their money from?
They get it through state. Have you paid property taxes and state income taxes? That's where they get most of their money from. They get a little bit of a payoff.
They also get part of it from the federal government.
They get hush money from the federal government. So I don't know why they're complaining about Trump's hush money case when hush money goes on all the time, all over the country, especially to congressmen. I mean, and states. Here's a little trinket from the federal government, so you guys will shut up and listen to what we have to say. and all the television networks except us get hush money from the government. And as soon as we get hush money, I'll shut up. But we don't get any hush money.
So way back at the beginning of the show, you mentioned that Trump could go to prison if he's found guilty in the hush money trial.
Yes.
I read an article that says that that's not super likely. He'd be a first-time offender. The first time he's ever been found guilty. He's up on 34 charges in the case, but it's 34 times the same charge. Every time he wrote a check to Michael Cohen to pay Michael Cohen back for the payment, that generated another charge. So if anything, he might get sentenced to a few months in jail and not, years in prison. And as a first-time offender, he might even get probation.
Good for him.
It went quiet. I heard in the background what Nick was saying, and Nick was all over the place with his comments. I hope he pops back on. I know he might be in the background again, but just to point out that we only have two options. We either have Trump or we have Biden. And currently Biden is actually better for the economy than Trump. If we talk about balancing the budget and all this other stuff, well, the budget truly has never truthfully been balanced. Yes, Clinton did the best with the budget. Obama was right after him after that. The Bushes stunk because Obama had to put Bush's war on the budget. Trump was garbage because he threw 25% on there. He also didn't throw COVID on the budget, so Biden had to throw COVID on the budget. So the budget, yeah, it's way up there, but there are things that we have to spend on, and we just have to deal with. I mean, there are things that we can negotiate and work with, but it boils down to who do you think we can hold accountable? And between the two, Biden is the one that we can hold accountable and work with. Trump, you can't hold accountable and work with.
Sorry.
So sure, we can complain that, oh, well, the budget is out of the water, blah, 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 blah. But you have to add context, and you have to be honest about it. I mean, legitimately, we had a discussion yesterday, and Nick, you complained that Reagan was the worst president in your lifetime, and you hated Reagan. Yet the policies of the Republican Party are what are being championed by the current Republican Party, the same policies that you said made Reagan the worst president ever. So, and what's even worse, you said Trump is an abomination. Trump being an abomination makes him worse than the alternative. And so we just have to be realistic on things. We have two options. It's one or the other. And yes, there are problems with the budget that Biden has, but they aren't so atrocious that they're going to harm us in the death way that you're talking about. But we can hold him accountable, and we can push him to a particular way. Trump, you can't do that.
So I just looked up the history of the national debt, which is the accumulated budget deficits. And it's only been at zero for about 5 years, and that was in 1830 to 1835. So 190 years ago. The deal is like getting a credit card, that credit cards will extend you. Well, it's different because credit cards want you to not be able to pay it off. And then they can start hitting you with 20% of a year interest. But the deal is that credit cards don't care if you're debt free as long as they're confident that they can squeeze more money out of you. And it's the same way with the U.S. and the world. Yeah, our national debt as a percentage of GDP is the highest it's ever been, but other countries will continue to buy our bonds as long as they think that we can keep functioning as a country. We've functioned on credit, as I said, for the past 190 years.
And the only way,
the
only solution is to get back to actually having an educated electorate, having an educated citizenry that can produce and create things that the world wants and needs. Until we get back to that kind of logic, we're always going to end up buying stuff. When we fight, oh, well, we can't get into solar. Well, you know, other countries are actually dominating the solar market better than we are. You know, Sasha, in the stock world, in Intel and other chip makers, including NVIDIA, are going to get hit because China has said that they're going to try and pull all the chips they're going to pull Intel and other chip makers from the cell phone market in China. The cell phone market in China is freaking huge in comparison to what it is in the US. If that hits the cars, that's even more of a death nail. That means that's going to harm Intel stocks, and there's going to be a lot of problems in terms of their bottom line that they're going to have to deal with. So there's
the US got spoiled. The U.S. got spoiled in manufacturing. After World War II, we made half the world's stuff. Now we only make 10% of the world's stuff. And it's not all our fault. It's just that after World War II, the rest of the world was in ruins. And so it's partly our fault. We outsourced a lot of manufacturing to cheaper countries. But yeah, but since World War II, like the world's been rebuilt and the whole Southern Hemisphere came online and, you know, got developed.
So it's just until we start producing and stop saying that everything that we spend money on is a waste. No, sending rockets to find out about what's going on with the sun's effect on the earth and actually the exosphere or whatever, the particle, the aura that basically protects us.
Solar corona.
Yeah, around the Earth. I cannot.
The Van Allen belt. Yeah.
So that protects us, and how is that affected by the sun? That is important to find out. If we can find out and utilize NASA and all the science based around that, the chips, bringing chips back and doing all the technology stuff around AI. All these things that we can produce and do here and begin to outsource to other countries is something that we really need to look more and more into, but we're not, because we get into these, well, we need more oil. We need more coal. We shouldn't spend money on health and education. We only need this. No, that's stunting our growth.
And we definitely don't need more chips, and we don't need to send billionaires.
Yes, we do need more chips.
I don't know why you suck up to billionaires to donate.
I just pointed out a fact.
I mean, you would be a beautiful member of the Republican Party. Any chance I can get you to join the Republican Party and you send money to chip manufacturings, of all the disgusting things to do, you're giving billionaires
hear what I just stated?
Our credit card. Why are you doing that? And then space. Oh, we got to go.
Wall Street Journal, chips. China tells telecom carriers to phase out foreign chips.
Musk and the Republican Party.
No,
baby. I wouldn't give him a dime. Not one dime.
Hold on a second.
Not one dime.
Hold on.
Put money into housing. Oh, but you don't care about poor people.
No, hold on a second.
Put money into housing. I won't do that.
Hold on a second, because I want to get to housing in a minute and everything.
Oh, I won't do that.
Hold on a second.
Give money to billionaires. Oh, I'll do that.
They weren't always billionaires.
You're a Republican.
Microsoft
technology war.
They weren't always billionaires. Microsoft was a putz in Albuquerque carving computer cases out of wood. HP was started in a garage. You need to. We have made huge. America's gotten rich off of technology.
No, they haven't.
Hold on a second. Rick,
don't hand me that, Rick. America hasn't gotten rich. Bill Gates has gotten rich, and Elon Musk has gotten rich. You haven't gotten rich. Neither has anybody in the panel.
But speaking of technology,
has anybody who's listened to this.
Hold on a second.
Sasha,
speaking of technology, hey, hold on.
But don't say
speaking
that
of technology,
they got rich.
I got a question for Rick, and then I got a question about housing really quickly. But my question about to Rick is, I know because it's going to hit the West Coast that a number of people will probably be concerned about this nuisance of an animal that's about to come out and make a lot of noise and everything. And I'm sure there'll be tons of research on the cicadas. So should we be researching cicadas? Because I'm thinking that Nick does not want to research these animals, even though they are part of the ecosystem and all along those lines. But they will be making a lot of
science is going to do science. Somebody will do cicadas. Maybe they can figure out how to recipes for cicadas.
Yeah, if it's going to hurt California, let California pay for it. They have the biggest income tax in the United States, 13.3%. They have plenty of money.
Except that most almost like we had a really good my mom died, my wife's mom died. The past 2 years we've had like huge amounts of income in inheritance and all this stuff, and we don't pay anywhere near 13.3. I think our effective rate, it wasn't low, but it wasn't, you hear 13.3 and it's the end of the world. Until the last couple of years, we never paid more than 4% to the state of California. And this last year, when we made a ton of inheritance money plus annuity plus all this stuff, we still were only at like 6.3%.
That's because in America you don't pay inheritance or estate taxes.
No, but some of that stuff gets
come
like
on, Rick.
No. Hold on. We made a ton of money because some of that inheritance was in the form of annuities.
Get off the inheritance for a second. I want to come back to housing, which you just mentioned earlier, Nick. I want to come back to housing. Because you just mentioned housing earlier and everything, and there is a group of individuals that have come up with I think it's a multiple $billion-dollar plan to help with housing, but I'm afraid that because of them being perceived as a part of the far left agenda, and I know not necessarily agree with that, but that's how they are perceived, that it won't get the dues that it needs. Because when I've looked at the proposal that Bernie Sanders and AOC have put out looks like a solid effort to address a major issue. So what is our thoughts about this? Because housing is a major issue.
Housing should
be a proposal that will eliminate some of the housing concerns.
Housing should be a right, okay? And the thing is, if the federal government's going to squander their money, at least build bloody housing for everybody. And housing should be a right for everybody. But see, Jatovy wants to send all the money to space people. He wants to send it to computers.
Yeah, those people are going to start developing 3D house printing technology that will reduce the price of housing.
Average American.
Those billionaires
are homeless. I do care.
I'm
a Republican. I do care they're homeless. He doesn't.
Those science geniuses will figure out the housing thing because they will develop. I've seen them in action. So have you, if you've watched 60 Minutes, 3D house printers that will reduce the cost.
Yeah, I've seen those.
And so that they'll make housing cost like, I don't know, 30% of what it currently costs. And they'll make houses that are fireproof. That if you want to be stupid enough to build in the middle of a forest.
Right, and the government policy should be behind. Government policy should be behind housing and food insecurity, not Jatovy's idea, which is to send money to space and send money to computer chip billionaires in San Francisco. Put it into housing.
Point out about the whole science piece of things. For right now, the studying of the cicada would be great because we need to figure out what's going on.
I'll tell the homeless
that in is because of the fact right now off the Florida Keys.
Okay, I'll tell the next homeless person I met.
The fish are swimming off the coast of the Florida Keys in circles and killing themselves. So if our ecosystem becomes so destructive and is killing itself, like the bees, if we lose bees, we lose food. You talk about food insecurity. There's your food insecurity. You're talking about.
I'll tell the next homeless person.
Fish are swimming to death.
Homeless is I'm spending your money
they talk about how the sawfish, when they, it's an endangered species, but they pulled one out and put it in actual clean water, it swam normal. So that means there's something going on with our oceans and in our water at this moment. Could it be algae? Could it be something else chemically that we're putting in there? Because if the coral reef goes away, the coral reef itself, that biome is what's keeping a lot of this world alive. So food insecurity, life, all that science. So if you're talking about not putting money into science,
well, speaking of science,
private industry
are around this notion. Because hold on a second. Speaking of science, because they were going to tie science into the clean energy bill. Because actually, the bill that AOC and Bernie Sanders put out is the Green New Deal for public housing, which is aiming to transform the nation's public houses into eco-friendly, affordable housing that will create also some well-paying jobs. So the visionary legislations are proposing investing between 162 billion and 234 billion over the next decade to decarbonize all public housing units and to build even more green homes that will be public housing. So that could actually make it, because I know even here in Durham, we've had some that have dealt with asbestos and other things that have caused some major problems in the public
all this has
housing.
a bumpy path, because what we think is carbon neutral and ecological, we often find out has other costs to the environment, like electric cars. They have a huge carbon footprint because you have to mine all this lithium and all this other stuff to build the batteries. But the only way we'll figure out what to actually do and what works is by doing a ton of science, which means to some extent in the 1970s, the US government funded 70% of pure science.
No, you let the private industry fund it. I mean, this is ridiculous. If Tesla, well, instead, here's what we did. We spent a lot of money on the stupid Tesla charging stations all over the country without forcing Tesla to do studies to show that their car is more environmentally sound than just having a gas engine car. So don't put the burden on the federal government.
What you're saying is,
hold on, wait. We did the same thing for cars. We did the same thing for oil companies and car manufacturers in the 1950s. Eisenhower said, let's build the interstate highway system, which was a similar huge windfall.
Just to point out, Nick, what you just stated was wrong. The reason they went
wrong.
Yeah, and let me explain. The reason what you're talking about, they need to figure out all this. It's not about the car itself. What came about was that there are plenty of different electric cars out there. There were also plenty of different electric car connections that are out there. And there was actually only one entity that actually had an infrastructure already built with a stable set of electric charging stations. That was Tesla. That's where they spent a lot of their money. So therefore, instead of going to Ford, which had a different actual connection and not even enough in terms of an infrastructure already out there for charging stations, or going to Fisker, or going to any of the other ones, Rivian, so on and so forth, they didn't have an infrastructure already built that was already being utilized, because all of these other cars actually had extra connectors to make it work with the Tesla charging stations. So what the actual US did was take advantage of an infrastructure that was already built and said, let's make this a universal connection. It's the same thing that's happened with cell phones. If you notice that the iPhone right now, everybody says, well, the iPhone is the number one. Well, it's not. Android phones are the number one phone across the world. The one iPhones used to have its own actual charging block itself. It's a different connector. It's the flash, I forget whatever it's called, but it's a different setup. But now, if you look at all iPhones and iPads and even even their computers themselves, the MacBooks and everything, what do they come out with? A USB-C. The USB-C is what became the standard connection for every Android phone, which was mass produced everywhere. So what ended up happening is the same thing in the infrastructure setup as the come about of the USB-C being the standard application or the standard usage for every phone out there. So you can't buy a new iPhone with the old connection. So if you have the old connection and get a new iPhone, you have to toss that one out. So it's just the standard growth procedure of any technology. That's what happens.
Yeah, and it shouldn't cost the government anything. They just adopt a law saying you have to have universal connections. But that's not what's going on. The liberal lunatics are dumping money, hard-earned American taxpayer money,
the investment by the government,
inflation.
No.
System. And that's what's going on.
That investment,
that's the reason Joe Biden doesn't deserve to be president.
There's another side to this, which is the revenue side. Over the past 50 years, and increasingly in the 21st century, the Republicans have stripped out our tax base, where, as we've talked about a lot in this show, that in 1960, when any money Elvis made more than $1 million, he paid 91% in federal taxes. And we've now what's
That's
the
right.
highest federal tax bracket? 38%.
Something
something
like that. I forget the exact amount.
Yeah,
Hey,
37,
just
38.
really quickly, because I know we've only got a few minutes to
Yeah.
go, but I was actually just thinking about something, because there is a part of our society, it's been a part of our society for decades and everything. And I know based on friends that are in this particular industry that I'm going to mention and everything, that it can be one of the most hazardous things that exist and everything. But a lot of times we don't think about that till after it happens and all along those lines. Because go to any city in the state, and I guarantee you that there is a cleaners or a washing, like a laundromat of some sort.
Yeah.
And if you ever notice anything about the laundromats, it takes forever to clean them out once they leave and everything. I've seen that in Durham, I've seen that in other cities, and I don't know that we oftentimes even think about those environmental consequences till they take place, because we saw that even across from Northgate when one of the laundromats left and everything, and it took them almost a year or two to clean that up and everything. So a lot of times we don't even think about the environmental concerns until after it is time to clean it up after the fact.
Yeah, we and that will, AI and technology will reduce that kind of waste, because you got a laundromat. It's got like 35 dryers and 35 washers, and then they're obsolete, and you've got like 8 tons of garbage that ends up, much of it, in a landfill. New technology will be that we share our junk. Like, we've gone through, my family in the past few years, we've gone through like 3 or 4 vacuum cleaners. They break, and that's like 10, 15 pounds of garbage. And via increasing technology, we'll learn how to share tools. Like, we've lived through the era where every American adult with sufficient money, unless you live in New York City, has their own car. And those cars last 10 years, 12 years, and then you've got 3,000 pounds of garbage. And we'll figure out how to do car sharing. Cory Doctorow, that I always talked about like electric drills. You use your drill twice a year. Why should every household in America have a drill that gets used twice a year, when you can use an Amazon type delivery system where you type in, I need to borrow a drill, you get the drill. One drill serves dozens of families, and you have less waste from everybody having a drill. All this stuff is because of science and grants and figuring out the technology.
Is there ever
it's all because of private industry figuring out technology.
No, it's not. It's
not because the government who wastes
money. Look at where our science came from. We got a ton of science, including all atomic science, from World War II and developing the bomb. Then we got a ton of science from the Vietnam War. We got a ton of science from going to the moon. And then we got a ton of science from the federal push to educate America after the Russians put Sputnik in orbit.
Hold a second. Do you enjoy TV dinners?
No.
Do you ever have them because of necessity?
No.
You've never had a TV dinner in your life.
Just to co-sign on what Rick talked about. Rick pointed out the two wars and everything, and a lot of the money, yes, a lot of the science comes from our push for national security. So a lot of money gets put into science just so we can, like the space mission was basically the push to catch up to Sputnik, because of the fact they didn't want the Russians to beat us out there. I mean, there's a lot of money that gets pushed into science when there's wars or something like that on the line. But if you take, for example, a lot of the things that we're utilizing today, I mean, from clothes to, even what police officers are using, or even what we listen to, that comes from NASA. NASA actually got tons of federal money from there. All the research dealing with, not only vaccines, but different medicines, that's an investment from a lot of government. You can have these private entities. Yes, it's supposed to be a public-private partnership. That is essentially what it's supposed to be down to, or what it's supposed to boil down to. But the problem is that we get so tied up in these buzzwords and buzz phrases that we shouldn't spend, because it's like a credit card. It's not like a credit card. You can't run a government like a business.
I'm starting to get it, Jatovi. What's happening? This is the liberal lunatic version of the trickle down theory.
No.
What happens is NASA develops it and it trickles down.
Honestly, Nick, even if you take that viewpoint, NASA has helped our society immensely more than the trickle down economics from any rich person.
It's trickle down liberal lunatic.
If you take that viewpoint,
I got it. It trickles down, and eventually maybe someday
Jatovi, just really quickly, the bulletproof vest and the material from the bulletproof vest, didn't that come from some of the NASA technology? And that's actually where I was going with the TV dinners, even though he says he doesn't enjoy them. A lot of people that are doing economical eating, they depend on those. And
next time I go see somebody in California who's homeless, I'm going to say, guess what? You shouldn't be homeless because the NASA trickle down theory worked for you. And you're starving to death. Don't worry about starving to death. The NASA trickle down theory.
A rich man who can help out that poor man is going to go to. So a rich man is going to go to a poor man and complain that this entity didn't help you.
Oh, the NASA trickle down theory is going to help you.
That's the example that you just.
I got a homeless guy right down here in Durham.
That's what you just
I'm going to go tell him. I said,
Nick, you have extra money. Why don't you help the poor guy?
Housing.
You have extra money. Why don't you help the poor guy?
No, it's not going to get him food.
You avoided my question.
That's trickle down theories don't work.
You have extra money. Why don't you help the poor guy?
Rick, I do. I help poor people all the time, but go on.
I would guess that a lot of the homelessness that we're seeing is a disruption. I don't know that it's even half, but I'd say that at least a quarter of the homeless are indirectly due to disruption from increasing technology. The politicians have been crap at addressing it, that they blame the other party, but they don't blame like pressure on the world of employment from technology. Like all these half jobs we have.
The mental health, are dealing with.
Home should be a right in the United States, but see, in Jatovi's imagination, he'd rather have trickle down theory from cell phones and shooting stars into the sky. And
what I would like in terms of
manufacturers. On the homeless, I don't get it.
A better opportunity for the homeless.
This should be your number one priority.
A better opportunity for the homeless is to actually have science create potential jobs from creating these businesses, because a lot of these homeless individuals want opportunities and want to prove themselves. They don't want to depend on somebody like in Nick's world that has all this money that can just spend all these pennies and just get. No, they don't want that. They want the opportunity to actually have themselves feel valued in society. Yes, some of them have mental issues, but a lot of them want jobs and want the opportunities, but they're not getting those opportunities and jobs.
And they can't afford a home. Who can afford a home in California? The reason they're homeless is the homes are unaffordable by anybody in any stretch of the imagination. Go on, Rick. You sort of exist in California.
All right. So this is 2024. Science fiction problems, which a lot of our problems require science fiction solutions, which require science. If you wrote the history of the past 10 years and sold it as a novel in 1970, it would be the best-selling science fiction novel, because we have all these new problems. We elected an idiot, a moron, because of social media, something that didn't exist 15 years ago. And that's a science fiction problem. Homelessness because of technology is a science fiction problem. We're going to have to science our way out of it, which will require some government participation. We have 336 million Americans. That's 112 Americans, for every American during the Revolutionary War. Of course, we're going to have a big ass government for 1/3 of a billion people. And yeah, we're going to spend on a variety of stuff, some of which seems more sensible than the other stuff. But it's been that way. We've subsidized science for the whole history of America. The Lewis and Clark was science paid for by the government when they did when they went to the Northwest to see what was there.
Hey, Rick, we're winding
Yeah,
down.
but this doesn't solve
we're winding down,
homelessness
but isn't
and
one of
food
the biggest
insecurity.
founding fathers
These should
scientists?
be a
Because
federal
if I remember
government
correctly,
priority.
James Franklin
And
was a
stop this whole
scientist, as
thing
was some of
funding
the others
science,
who were
funding
part of
this,
the science fact.
funding education, fund a bloody home, and fund a bloody making sure that food insecurity doesn't exist. Make those a priority, please. And
Yeah,
stop this.
science
Hey,
will.
we got to fund NASA.
Science
Here's-
will be a huge part of
here's
the
the
NASA
problem.
ain't going to build a bloody home for you.
Just
know.
to point it out.
I'll tell the next homeless person.
just-
I
just
said,
to
look,
point it
we
out,
got
Nick.
plenty of money going to NASA.
Nick,
Look at you.
you're saying to pay for the homeless and make it
Yeah, it's should be a right.
You know who
And
doesn't
when you
want
talk
to
about
do that?
food insecurity,
actually-
Why,
If
why do you liberals
Republican
hate
Party.
people? Why do you liberals love homeless people? I don't get it. You know,
You said make it a
No, we just
priority.
don't
Now
know
you're
what
saying-
I just
exactly
want them to
what-
have a bloody home. You know,
all right, so wait, let's talk about food insecurity. If you in the
Yes.
future, if you want to eat almonds, if you want to eat steak, you're going to have to figure out how to grow those things without using like the insane amount of water that it takes to keep a cow alive and to grow almonds. Water is one of the biggest. If you look at a map of the US, the whole Southwest is fed by just the teeny ass Colorado River, which only has like 1/3 of the amount of water you need to do everything it needs to do for the Southwest. And so we're going to have to figure out, science will have to figure out how to engineer meat, not because, we're worried about the cows, but because
Rick,
it's
Rick,
so
it's not just
freaking
us, because you heard at the
expensive in
beginning
terms
of the
resources to raise a cow.
Rick, it's not just us, because you heard at the beginning of the news story. I just said that in Colombia, which is a Latin American country, there are people that are going to have to start taking group showers because that is what they are recommending, and all along those lines, because they have a serious water shortage and they're getting ready to try to ration the amount of water that they have because they have a water problem in that part of Latin America. So it's not just here in this part of the world.
And we'll see it here. We'll see, like, if you read science fiction about the near future, some showers in the future won't even use water. They'll use ultrasound. The way you
actually, you can today using technology turn air into water, but we'll get into that on Monday. But we have to get out of here because we're at the hour mark.
Yeah,
So
sounds good. Let's get
we'll
on
solve the world's problems next week. That's what we're gonna do.
that. All right.
World's problems right here, buddy. We're going to solve the world's problems right here on Pod TV next week. In the meantime, we're out of here.